What's happening, everyone? James Lynch here. My year-end coverage continues here today as I look back on the most hated fighters in the UFC this past year. Now, this is an interesting category because this is actually not like my personal opinion of who I don't like as a fighter. Obviously, I wouldn't do that anyways. I got to be professional, but this is more of a list of what I've seen on social media, how people have reacted to certain fighters after wins and losses, and just sort of my overall view of what I've seen online. And I might be wrong about some of these, but that's why I want in the comments after this video for you to let me know if there's any fighters I missed or some fighters that you would include on this list. We're just going to do 5, and then I'm going to do some honorable mentions, and let's get into it right now. And you'll kind of have an idea of which way I'm going here as far as the most hated fighters from fans this past year. And coming in at number 5 is Merab Dvalishvili. I think he gets a lot of unfair hate, but the reason that Merab gets so hated is 2 reasons. Number 1 is the fact that he beat Sean O'Malley. There's a lot of O'Malley fans, so people kind of didn't like the way that Merab beat him, whether it's, wrestling him and all that different stuff. So he kind of got some hate for that. There's obviously all the Aljo stuff as well. And he did gain some fans as well with his skits and all that. So that's why I didn't have him near the top spot. But I think, especially over the last month, this whole situation with him and Umar Nurmagomedov, you have all these fans claiming that he's ducking Umar. He didn't want to fight Umar. He's talking about an O'Malley rematch. He's talking about fighting Petr Yan. If you look right now, this is one of the number 1 talking points I see all the time when it comes to Merab. It's not even the fight itself with Umar. Like, people, even with the fight being booked against Umar, there's people still claiming that Merab is ducking Umar Nurmagomedov. So I had to put Merab on here. There's just too much noise around him and how fans perceive him. And that is that, there's some fans out there that believe he's afraid of Umar. I'm not in that camp, but there certainly is people that are upset that Merab is so vocal about how Umar got his title shot. Of course, Merab, I would argue, has had a harder road to earn a UFC title shot than Umar Nurmagomedov did. So that is, again, fans don't like that he's pointing that out and they're perceiving it as he's afraid to fight him. So yeah, I had to put Merab on this list. As much as he had some great skits and he certainly won some fans over, I'd say there's far more fans who don't like Merab because of all these other things. So Merab coming in at number 5. Okay, let's get to number 4. And at the time of recording this is a fighter who lost last night, and that is Colby Covington. Now, listen, and always got to point out on these lists, like, this isn't my personal, like, who I don't like. Again, I don't really hate any fighters, if we're being honest here, but Colby has to be on this list for a couple of reasons. So first and foremost, he only fought once this year. He did not fight Ian Gary. A lot of people were upset by that and felt like a way to win back fans is him fighting Ian Gary. And I still to this day don't know why Colby did not fight earlier this year. And there were opportunities for him to fight Gary. I think the biggest reason why fans don't like Colby at this point is because of the fact that, forget about the Leon Edwards fight last year, which was not a very good fight. It's the fact he didn't fight Gary. That is going to be something that is going to be attached to him for this entire year because people wanted to see the fight. They wanted a reason to root for Colby because there's a lot of people who do not like Ian Gary. But Gary's the one who ended up coming out better in this because he ended up fighting Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he fought, forget about Shavkat, he fought MVP, fought Jeff Neal. Gary was very active this year. Colby was not. And, when you're coming off a performance like he had last year against Leon Edwards, it's fans want to see you redeem yourself, and Colby didn't do that. Props for him for taking the Buckley fight. But again, the Buckley fight, that wasn't really competitive, Buckley taking him out. So yeah, Colby Covington coming on this list because I think there were a lot of people who were fans of Colby, and that kind of, went away with the Leon performance. And then added in the fact he didn't fight Gary and he didn't fight at all this year. Colby definitely lost some fans. So I would say Colby Covington, again, Colby would be on this list regardless because even if he had a great year, because there's still people who don't like him for some of the comments he makes and all this different stuff. But you can't have a top hated list without having Colby on here, especially after what's happened this year. So unfortunately, Colby Covington on this list at number 4. Okay, number 3. This was one last year. If you would have told me this guy's on this list, I would have been like, you're lying. There's no way. But we have to put him on here. And I don't agree with this either, but it's Mario Batista. No one, I'd say, got more hate on, well, there is some people on this list that I'm going to get to later. Mario Batista got so much hate last year and is one of the haters. It was literally like a perfect storm of bad things that happened to Mario Batista. Okay, so first and foremost, Batista is fighting the legend Jose Aldo. It's pretty hard for people to root for Mario Batista against Jose Aldo. So that right there was an uphill battle. The second part of this fight was that Batista fought in a way that fans were not too happy with. It was similar to how Merab fought Aldo, which is sort of push him against the fence, neutralize the striking. Fans hated that. Then the third thing that happened was people felt like Aldo won the fight, yet Batista was the one that got the nod. So it was this sort of perfect storm of where, Batista never really had a chance in this one. Now, I will say this, and this is why I think Batista is unfairly being criticized here. Batista could have gone out, taken some risks. He could have lost. Then fans would have said he sucked. You know what I mean? So it's like Batista did what was best for him, which was to win the fight. Was it the most entertaining thing? Not really, but it's a fight. You got to win your fight. If you win your fight, you make more money. It's as simple as that. And you can't always please the fans. So as far as the decision, if you look on MMA decisions right now, it was split down the middle. That's another thing I found interesting. I personally thought it was close. I don't necessarily think it was a robbery. I think it was a very close fight. But yeah, Batista, not liked by fans this year. And like a lot of fighters on this list, I think it's unfairly hated. But Batista certainly has to be on this list. Okay, coming in at number 2. This was, yeah, I mean, there was not a bigger talking point. If you had to add up like talking points for 2024, this would be near the top of the list. And one of the biggest talking points this year was Jon Jones not fighting Tom Aspinall. And therefore, Jon Jones hated by the fans. They hated the fact that we had to watch a Stipe fight. They hated the fact that he's not fighting Aspinall. They hated the fact that he's saying that he's not fighting Aspinall because it's too disrespectful. Fans are smart. They can see right through this. There's no reason why Jon shouldn't have fought Aspinall. Like I said before, Jon would have saved himself a lot of heartache and a lot of people hating him. And he probably wouldn't have been even on this hated list if Jon just would have said like, look, like I just wanted to fight Stipe and then I want to retire and I'm going to ride off into the sunset. But no, Jon doubled down and said, no, I'm going to continue fighting and I want to fight Alex Pereira. And fans are looking at that going, why are you avoiding Aspinall? This idea that Aspinall hasn't proven himself. I mean, he's beat everyone he's faced. And the only fight right now that he could have right now that I think fans would be like, okay, maybe it's the last step, and that's Cyril gone. But outside of that, like it's not like Aspinall's gone out there and ducked a bunch of really good fighters. So the reason Jones is here because what was the big talking point after UFC 309? It was that Jon Jones has ducked Aspinall. There's the duck memes, all this stuff. Therefore, Jon has to be one of the most hated fighters on here because fans are upset with him because he's not fighting Aspinall. So that's why, as much as Jon Jones is one of the greatest fighters of all time and everything else, he's on the hated list. And then, don't even get me started on the stuff outside the cage because there was some other stuff that happened this year with the USADA thing. And yeah, so Jon's got to be on this list. He comes in at number 2, but he's not the number 1 most hated fighter. And I think you know which way I'm going with this. And I think this is a bit unfairly done, but I can see it where the fans are coming from. The number 1 most hated fighter this year, not the surprise to anyone. I have not seen a fighter get this much hate to this degree. And that is Jamal Hill. It's true. Name me a fighter that was hated more this year than Jamal Hill. He comes back. He fights Pereira. First off, Pereira fans were upset about the fact that Hill was promoting the fight. They felt it was this isn't me. This is what I see from fans online. What I see from fans online is Jamal Hill was disrespectful in how he built up the fight with Pereira. I guess because he said he was going to knock him out. I mean, if you're going to build up a fight and you want to be confident in your abilities, that's how you would probably do it, is say, I'm going to knock out my opponent. So I don't get that. And then the whole referee thing, which people are saying that Jamal's saying that's the reason he's lost and all this. Again, I don't need to dissect this, but this is what fans perceive him as. And then Hill has doubled down on this as well, doing the yawning thing with the fight with Ankalaev. And and I actually interviewed Hill recently and I asked him this question. I said, do you mind being, one of the most hated guys in the sport? And I think he's thriving off of it. He's leaning into the villain here. So I can't think of a fighter that was hated more this year than Jamal Hill. If you look at, like I said, the comments, like every post of Jamal Hill on Instagram, Brazilian flag, Shama, this and that. And then you just hear all types of people from all spectrums. I've heard coaches, I've heard, some media, I've heard other people just talk about how they don't like Hill. I think people have the wrong idea. It's something that I've said a number of times. I'm not going to go into it here, but listen, I'm also aware of how people think and what the, general consensus is. And Jamal Hill, number 1 hated fighter in 2024. We'll see if that changes next year. But Hill just had the one fight he lost, and that's all that people will remember him for this year was the loss to Pereira. So Jamal Hill coming in at number 1. Want to get a couple honorable mentions here on this list. Bo Nickel certainly got a lot of hate. Even before the Paul Craig fight, people didn't like the fight with Brundage. They felt, he should have been a little bit more dominant in that one, but especially the Paul Craig fight. And not even the fact that he had a bad fight against Paul Craig where he won but didn't look impressive. It's the doubling down on it saying, oh, I didn't want to finish Paul Craig. I did a video on this, and I think Bo Nickel's very much in the wrong here. And I also think it made things worse, him saying, everyone I talked to said it was a great performance. Like, most people didn't. So there's that. Juliana Pena gets on this list for 2 reasons. Number 1, I think fans have just been turned off of Juliana Pena, but also the fact that people felt like Raquel Pennington beat Juliana Pena in that fight. Pena gets the title. She's got to be on this list too. And then I'll throw Ian Gary on here, although I think Gary has won people over with his performance against Rakhmonov. I thought it was good, but his comments with Usman saying that, Usman should have taken the fight and just, all the stuff that Gary has going on outside the cage. He gets an honorable mention, but I didn't want to put Gary in the top 5 because I think Gary was hated. Gary would have definitely been, close to the top in 2023 as far as most hated with the stuff with Jeff Neal and Luke Hay and the Neil Magny comments. This year, though, I feel like he didn't get a ton of hate, really, not compared to the year before. So I put Gary as an honorable mention, but if you wanted to put him in your top 5, I don't have a huge issue with that. But yeah, that's the list. Those are the top 5 hated fighters in 2024, in my opinion. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Is there anyone I missed on this list? Should you have someone in a different order? I'd love to hear your top 5 fighters that you think were hated. Again, I don't agree with this list. This is just what I perceive seeing things on social media, on YouTube, on Reddit, wherever. That's what I noticed the most, that these seem to be the top 5 fighters that are hated the most. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.